So again, I want to take a look at a scale, preferably 3 units over for pi over 2, 3 for pi, and so on, 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, and 2 units up for 1 and negative 1. That's preferable. I will be handing out some sheets that are not set up that way, but this is preferable. Then I want to take a look at the unit circle, and because cosine is x over r, we're going to use the quadrantal angles to find each one of the values on the curve. So the cosine of 0 is equal to x over r, 1 over 1, which is equal to 1. The cosine of pi over 2, or 90, is equal to x over r, 0 over 1 is 0. Cosine of pi, x over r, negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. Cosine of 3 pi over 2 is x over r again, 0 over 1 is 0. And 2 pi is the same as 0, which is equal to 1. So the cosine curve is going to begin at 1. We could look at 30, 60, even 30, 45, 60 in order to get intermediate values, but actually it's a nice smooth curve. So it's going to go from 1 to 0 to negative 1 to 0 back to 1. And a nice smooth curve. It does not come down to a point. It's a nice smooth curve like that. Now we can graph it on the other side of the y-axis as well. It continues in the same way. It goes from 1 to 0 to negative 1 to 0 back up to 1. So we'll look at the domain. The domain is the side-to-side values, and it goes from negative infinity to infinity. The range is the highest and lowest values, so it's between a negative 1 and 1 for the range. The amplitude is the height or the highest value of the graph, which is 1. The period is where one complete cosine graph finishes. So it starts at 0, it finishes one complete curve by 2 pi. So 2 pi is the period. And then we're going to look at whether this is odd or even. If it's odd, it's symmetric with respect to the origin. If it's even, it's symmetric with respect to the y-axis. Is this an odd or an even function? Even, because it's symmetric with respect to the y-axis. Okay, now I want to change the amplitude of the graph, and that is the number in front of the sine or the cosine. And it just tells me instead of going to a height or a maximum value of 1, it's going to go to a maximum value of 1/2. So if I want to graph these two on the same axis, I'm still going to start at 0, but instead of going to 1, I'm going to go to 1/2, to 0, to negative 1/2, to 0. So it's a flatter curve than what we had here. It's flattened down. If we have y equals 3 sine x, it goes from 0 to positive 3 to 0 to negative 3 to 0. So this is the cosine graph. Now the cosine graph typically goes from 1 to 0 to negative 1 to 0 to 1. Now that the amplitude is 2, the cosine curve is going to start at 2 to 0 to negative 2 to 0 to positive 2. And a smooth continuous curve, it does not come down to a point like absolute value would. And then on the other side, it would go from 0 to negative 2 to 0 to positive 2. Now, negative 2. it means that instead of starting at positive 2, we're starting the cosine graph at negative 2. So we're starting at negative 2. Oh, this one is here. We're starting at negative 2, and then we're going to 0, then to positive 2, then 0, then negative 2. So the graph is going to look like this. And on the other side, we would go to 0, positive 2, 0, and end at negative 2. So that is what we get for this one.